from what I understood of what you just said, you're producing 6 crore doses. So this is 6 crore vials or 6 crore doses? Because each vial has 10. Yeah. So 6 crore doses of the COVID vaccine at this moment, and you hope to scale up significantly by June. When you say scale up significantly, this 6 crore will become how much in every month?
10 to maybe 11 crores on a monthly basis. So it's like, you know, almost a 40% increase.
You've also stopped sending supplies abroad. That's got you some bad press internationally because there were commitments. Now questions being asked about why those commitments are being reneged on. How do you view many Indians, you know, who say when it comes to terrorism, when it comes to the flag, when it comes to various other issues, we're very nationalistic. Suddenly when it comes to the vaccine, we believe that, you know, you want to have this big vaccine Maitri project and have the vaccine shipped elsewhere. It's a very tough question. How do you see this play itself out? Because most people who are watching you on India Today this moment will say, you know, yes, we love the rest of the world, Vasudev Kutumbakam and all of that, but let's just ensure that our most needy people get vaccinated first, which is what the rest of the world is doing. So no one can really blame India for being selfish or thinking of its interests first. That's just the way the entire world is playing itself out right now.
Absolutely. In fact, I don't blame the Indian people at all to expect all the vaccines to come to India first, because if you look at what's happened in Europe, Europe also has banned or temporarily suspended, so to speak. We've not banned exports. We have prioritized our country for the next 2 months. Whereas Europe, US, they've banned exports of raw materials and vaccines, which is impacting other vaccine producers. You know, I publicly said that the US needs to have a global perspective and, you know, not ban raw materials. They might as well be banning their vaccines from being exported, because by banning certain raw materials, companies like myself and many others will not be able to scale up to the extent that we would want to. Fortunately enough, the US ban of raw materials is not affecting Covishield, but it's going to affect Covovax, which is the Novavax candidate, which I'm hoping to start stockpiling from next week, you know, going on for another few months until licensure.
So let me put that question to you further and have you elaborate on when your second vaccine, because when I came to the Serum Institute facility, there were 2 sets of COVID vaccine that you're working on. Covishield is already out in the market. Covovax is the second vaccine that you're working on. What is the status of that vaccine at this moment? How soon will it be available for public consumption in India? And what is the difference between your second candidate and Covishield, about which we now know more?
So in January, I think when we had this discussion, we were applying to the regulator in India to start the bridging study of Covovax, just like what we did for Covishield. Similar size, bridging study with, you know, the vaccine arm and the other comparator and others. So to do an immunogenicity bridging study. Now, that went a little bit up and down and had some delays, you know, in getting the permission going and discussions that we were having, because we wanted to get it right. We didn't want to start a trial and then have issues. So that has finally now started, as I publicly announced, and hopefully by September, maybe October at the latest, we hope to get licensure in India. That's where we are at the moment. And we will start to stockpiling some vaccines like we did for Covishield ahead of time. To answer your second part, the efficacy, global efficacy trials of Novavax have shown 89% efficacy overall, and also good efficacy, and I don't know exactly how much, maybe 50 to 60% against, you know, the South African and the UK variants. Maybe a little bit better against the UK variant as well. But let me tell you, both Covovax and Covishield, at the cost of repetition, has more than 94 to 95% efficacy against hospitalizations. In fact, in some countries, it is 100% effective against hospitalizations, which again means to the layman that 100% of people who took the vaccine never had to set foot in a hospital when they contracted COVID disease.
Okay, so now the one big concern is about these mutations. We are hearing from authorities in Punjab that the UK strain has come there. You're based out of Mumbai and Pune. We're seeing a wild surge of cases across the state in Maharashtra, not just in Mumbai and Pune, but in more rural or semi-urban areas as well, or at least towns outside the mega cities. How concerned are you about the efficacy of Covishield against the new strains of the COVID virus?
So that study is ongoing in the sense that we're observing, as you mentioned, this UK variant, which has now started to really spread in our country, and we're already getting data of the people who have taken Covishield, 1 dose and now some of them 2 doses, who have got the UK variant, because you know with genomics you can tell whether it's the UK one, Wuhan, whatever. And I think if you ask me this question in a month, we would have a real picture of thousands of people who have got the contrived the UK variant disease, who have already been vaccinated and hopefully not had to enter hospitals.
No, so let me press you further on this, Adar Poonawalla. I want to press you further. Essentially what you're saying is that you may not end up in hospital, but you are accepting that the level of efficacy of your vaccines against the UK or the South African strain is lesser than the original strain which we were dealing with earlier.
Let me rephrase. No vaccine, whether it's Pfizer, Moderna, Oxford, AstraZeneca, is preventing more than 20–30% of the people who get it or are exposed to COVID-19 from getting the disease. They experience mild to moderate disease. So there is no vaccine, sadly, on the planet today for COVID-19 that prevents the person getting the disease. In some cases, yes, it does prevent it if it's not a heavy infection, but in most cases, we've seen you've got Covishield or the Pfizer vaccine or so many other vaccines globally, you still get the disease, but 95% of the time you don't go to the hospital. Now, hopefully, we're going to see this trend continue even for the UK variants and for the South African variants. So far, what I can say with confidence is I have not seen anyone getting the UK variant disease who has been vaccinated and still ending up in hospital. So far that is the silver lining, but to conclude this beyond reasonable doubt, we should wait at least another month or two till we see enough people getting the UK variant as a disease who have been vaccinated and then observing how severe the disease progresses in their body. Now, that's when we can really conclude beyond reasonable doubt that these vaccines today are able to protect against these variants.
I don't know if you've seen, but there's a video clip of yours that's gone viral, which is from a past interview that we've done with you about the period between the 2 doses, where you'd said that the maximum efficacy is on the back of a gap of 12 weeks. At that point in time in India, the gap between the 2 doses was supposed to be 28 days. Now the government has increased that further to 6 to 8 weeks. At this moment, Adar Poonawalla, on the back of all the data that you have access to, how much should be the ideal gap between dose 1 and dose 2?
You're putting me in an awkward spot, but I'll try to answer it as correctly as I can. Now, the data globally has proof that the longer the period, and this was proven in the trials that we all knew, sadly it was communicated in a slightly confusing manner, and that's why, you know, there was all that doubt. Most vaccines, the longer gap you keep, it gives your body an opportunity to develop antibodies in a different way, and you don't block yourself in the first shot. I could explain this in detail, but perhaps not today on this show. The point here I'm trying to make, I stand by that statement. And as the Indian regulator sees more data, and it wouldn't be fair for me to make a statement and then say, oh, why is the Indian regulator not doing it? They need to see the data coming about, which they are, and that is why, you know, the committees that decide on these things, rightly so, increase the gap, you know, from the original gap that you mentioned was there, between 4 weeks and now it's 8 weeks. And we're slowly, as we get more data in India as well, and other places, going toward that 3-month gap that I had originally hoped that we would have here as well, but we're moving toward that, in that direction.
So just to
that's as best as I can answer that
rephrase
point.
what you've told our viewers in a very diplomatic way, Adar Poonawalla essentially suggesting that the ideal gap from his perspective between dose 1 and dose 2 is 3 months, even though the government's moved it up to 6 to 8 weeks from the 28 days.
And they're moving in that direction.
Sure.
They're moving slowly with data, which is the right way. Look, I mean, tomorrow, anyone, any manufacturer or anyone may say, you know, this is the way it should be. But we must respect our regulator who wants to go on data and proof and evidence.
Sure. So we've had cases, Adar Poonawalla, in our office where people got vaccinated and subsequently they ended up with COVID. Now when that happens, people wonder, you know, so you said that it will take about 15 days for immunity to start building. By 28 days you have strong immunity, about 70% immunity is already built up. Now a month has passed since these people took the dose and yet they end up COVID positive. And when that happens, everybody else wonders, hey, is Adar's vaccine working at all?
Very good. I'm so happy you asked that. So as I explained earlier, that's why I called it Covishield. It's not a bulletproof vest. Imagine if you're shot with a gun, the bullet, when it hits your bulletproof vest that is supposed to protect you and save your life, is only a shield. It's still going to cause you some damage, bruising, maybe you might even break a rib, right? But you are not going to die. And hopefully that is the case, and that is now being shown as an evidence. And what is that? It protects you against severe disease which can threaten your life 94–95% of the time, even after one dose, right? And you can look at the data which is coming out with Covishield will give you that protection. In fact, today, everyone from the time January to now, and now we've spent 3 months, you know, you've got I don't know how many crore people, more than 4 or 5 crore Indians that have received one dose. Let us now observe and see that are they being hospitalized or not.
No, is that not a changing of the goalpost? Because isn't the original idea of vaccination that this immunity booster builds up immunity in a way that you can ward off the infection, which means that the infection doesn't come to you? Now you're seeming to suggest that you may not be able to push back the infection, it will still come and get you, but it will ensure you don't die or don't end up in hospital. Is that not a changing of the goalpost, sir?
Absolutely not. I'll tell you why. Neither did I or anybody claim ever that any vaccine will prevent you from getting the disease and passing it on. Maybe it was a hopeful assumption from the public, or maybe that's what we all were praying for. But even if you look at other vaccines today, vaccines against pneumonia, rotavirus, so many others, very, very few vaccines will prevent getting the disease and transmission. You will be okay, right? And that is why it is essential that everyone gets vaccinated. You see, this was the whole message from WHO and everybody else. If you look at even the data from and claims from all other vaccine manufacturers, not just for COVID vaccines, you show me there are very few vaccines in the world that prevent complete, you know, disease penetration and transmission. I mean, imagine a virus is going into your system when you inhale it from someone else. That virus is going to multiply to a certain extent in your body. You will develop symptoms for it. But the fact is that if you've taken the vaccine, you've got ready-made antibodies and a T-cell response which will take care of that virus so quickly that you will not let that disease progress in your system to then be hospitalized. And that hypothesis and theory is now being proven in actual fact and evidence as we see, touch wood, a lot of people getting the vaccine and not having to go to the hospital. And I hope that that trend continues with these other mutant variants. That's the only question mark that remains. But this goalpost has never been a goalpost. I've never said it. I don't think anybody else has said it from the scientific community. Maybe some people have assumed it or hoped for it, but that certainly is sadly not going to be the case.
Finally,
so it'll be a shield, it'll be a Covishield, but it's not there's nothing which is really bulletproof. In fact, if you look at all the drugs out there, whether it's antibiotics, whether it's so many other drugs, some of the time they just don't work to cure you. So nothing today created by man is 100%. It works most of the time, but not all the time. That's the point here, sadly.
Finally, I have young children, and you know, we're keen that they go back to school, as I'm sure are many parents. We're wondering if you've started trials on young children. Is there any way of knowing whether your vaccine is efficacious even against young children? What age do you think is the youngest a child can be administered your vaccine?
So we're going down to the age of 12 and maybe even lower than that. That's happening in the UK at the moment. We don't know if we'll have to do another trial, you know, to show some safety in India. We might. We haven't applied to the regulator yet. I would guesstimate a 6-month time period for Covishield to be approved and proven to be safe in children below the age of 18, going down to maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12 years of age. And then maybe later on, eventually after a year, even lower than that. But you see, when it comes to children, we want to be very, very sure in the dosage, in the safety, the way the vaccine replicates in the system. You know, the children's metabolism and immune system is very different to an adult. So we need to go very, very carefully there. We don't want to take even a 1% chance of harming a child, you know, in these trials. So that's why it's taking a little bit longer.
How long will immunity last after the 2 doses have been completed? Will there be a requirement for a booster dose a few months later? How many months would that be?
So I know already some other vaccine manufacturers are proposing a 3rd dose and doing trials to prove how much better that makes things. We are looking at it because at the moment the data we have that minimum 7 to 8 months protection with the 2 doses after the 2 doses are administered is there. Now we have that data coming out globally. They'll publish it soon. So we know that for certain. Now after 8 months we don't know because the time hasn't passed. The real way of proving that, I mean, is, you know, waiting for that period to pass. So we've got data from the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine from the very early patients and trial candidates and others that were vaccinated, you know, 7-8 months ago. So we're waiting to really know and answer that question as time goes on. Whether a booster is even required or not, maybe yes,
okay,
you know, after maybe a year or so, something like that.
Adar Poonawalla, you've been the cynosure of all eyes over the past several weeks. 60 million doses being produced at your facilities in comparison with 4 million at your competitors. That's the gap. So, you know, about 95% of the people getting doses at this moment are likely to be getting one of the vials coming out of your facility. How have these few months been for you? Individually, institutionally, for your family and for the team at Serum?
You know, stressful would be an understatement because it wasn't just the stress, it was the uncertainty and unpredictability of every week throwing new challenges, issues, whether it's a lawsuit, whether it's some controversy on the product, whether it's some permission, whether it's an issue of the raw materials, you know, working till late hours of the night on conference calls, you know, that challenge and that work that the entire team and my family went through for the last year, you know, I would not wish it upon anybody. And I just hope that we as a community, as an industry, are better prepared in the future. And we've learned so many lessons that we'll be better prepared for this kind of situation going forward. And I'm just so relieved that things have now worked out so well after all the risks we took early on, for which we're able to do this today. And every employee is just so happy and proud, but still under tremendous stress, don't forget, because even one batch failure or one issue with the manufacturing facilities, you know, could be detrimental to the India supply, to the global supply. So that stress level is, you know, still up there even today, and it continues with all these new candidates. So, you know, whilst we wait for all this to be over, there's also a moment of relief and satisfaction and gratification that we have that we've been able to deliver this to our nation and to the world. And, you know, we're thankful to the government and everyone who's played a role in helping us get there, including the public that has been extremely understanding and patient with all this stuff that's been going on.
Are there any problems you're having in procuring vials or raw material around which you want there be public pressure so that, you know, whatever can be done, which needs to be done to scale up production happens as fast as possible, Mr. Poonawalla?
You know, that is ongoing. I mean, you know, I wish I could go there and protest in the US myself to say that you are holding back critical raw materials that are required for Covovax and so many other vaccine manufacturers in India and other parts of the world. You know, that is one thing we're really struggling with in the short term, because we need this now. We don't need it after 6 months or a year, because by then we'll have developed other suppliers, you know, all these critical media, and because we don't want to be importing things from China and other places where there could be quality issues or other supply constraints. We want to get the best quality raw materials, and at least Serum Institute and other vaccine manufacturers in India will not compromise on quality, and that is why we're so dependent on certain raw materials for our vaccines. And that is one thing that is an ongoing challenge and dialogue with the US and other countries which have invoked this Defense Act, which is a bit draconian. It's like banning vaccines or whatever, you know, from the US going to other countries. So we're doing what we can. Even the government of India is helping or trying to explain this to the government in the US to be able to relax these raw material shipments.
Okay, we wish you all the best. It's been good having you back on our network after several weeks. Thank you very much for your time. Multiple questions have been answered by Adar Poonawalla, and I hope that they give you something to wrap your heads around, because we're getting so many queries. We channel them to the CEO of Serum Institute, and hopefully you got some answers that you've been wanting to know about. Thank you so much, Mr. Poonawalla, for joining us on the News Track.
Thank you. Good to be with you.